Commander Sarah Chen stared out the observation window of the wandering spirit, watching the beautiful purple and gold clouds drift through space. They looked like silk ribbons dancing in an invisible breeze. Her science team had been studying them for 3 days, collecting samples and running tests. The clouds were unlike anything they had ever seen before. "Captain, these readings are incredible," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, barely looking up from her screen. "The molecular structure is completely unique. This could revolutionize our understanding of nebula formation." Sarah smiled. This was exactly why she loved exploration. Every day brought something new, something wonderful. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, and they were still like children discovering a vast playground. The other alien species treated humans with polite distance, sometimes even suspicion, but Sarah didn't let it bother her. They would prove themselves, eventually. The communication panel beeped. Sarah pressed the button, expecting another routine check-in from Earth. Instead, the screen filled with the face of something that looked like a crystalline mantis surrounded by floating geometric shapes. The creature's voice came through as a series of musical tones that the translator converted into angry words. "Human vessel, you have committed an unforgivable violation. Cease your activities immediately." Sarah's stomach dropped. "I'm Commander Chen. What violation? We're in unclaimed space, conducting peaceful scientific research." "Unclaimed?" The alien's crystals flashed red. "This is the memorial drift of the Catharii people. You are desecrating our ancestors' final ceremony. Every particle you have stolen is a soul you have disturbed." The blood drained from Sarah's face. She looked at the beautiful clouds with new horror. They weren't nebula formations. They were the remains of a funeral ritual. The samples they had collected, the tests they had run, the data they had gathered, all of it had been violations of something sacred. "I didn't know," Sarah whispered. "Please, we didn't know." "Ignorance is not innocence," the Cathari said coldly. "The Galactic Council will hear of this. Humanity will answer for this crime." The transmission cut off. Sarah stood frozen, her mind racing. Her crew gathered around her, their faces pale with shock. They had been so excited about their discovery. Now they had started an international incident before Earth had barely found its footing among the stars. 3 weeks later, Marcus Webb walked into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council and felt incredibly small. The room was massive, designed to accommodate species of every size and shape. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy. Some looked like animals from Earth. Others defied description. All of them were staring at him. Marcus was a former hostage negotiator from Detroit. He had talked down armed criminals, mediated gang disputes, and once convinced a man not to jump off a bridge by discussing baseball for 6 hours. But none of that had prepared him for this. Earth's leaders had sent him because he was good at talking to people. He hoped aliens counted as people. The Catharii representative floated at the center of the chamber. Shimmering thought in twilight was ancient, her crystalline body containing thousands of facets that reflected light in hypnotic patterns. Around her, other major powers waited to speak. The Vrex Dominion, a military empire of reptilian warriors, had sent warlord Kraxus. The Mesh Collective, a hive mind of interconnected beings, spoke through Convergence Node 7 Gamma. "The human stands accused," Shimmering thought began, her voice like wind chimes. "Their vessel violated sacred space, desecrated ancestral remains, and showed contempt for galactic customs. The Cathari demand justice. We demand Earth's expulsion from the galactic community." Warlord Kraxus leaned forward, his scarred face grim. "The Vrex agree. Humans are reckless. They endanger us all with their ignorance." The Mesh Collective's representative, a cluster of beings that spoke in perfect unison, added, "Patterns indicate high probability of future violations. Humans lack sufficient cultural integration protocols. Termination of contact is optimal solution. Marcus had prepared a speech. He had notes from Earth's best lawyers and diplomats. He had arguments about due process and proportional response. But standing there, looking at the pain in shimmering thoughts' thousands of facets, all his prepared words felt hollow. "You're right," Marcus said quietly. The chamber went silent. Several translators made confused noises, as if checking whether they had converted his words correctly. "We screwed up," Marcus continued. "Commander Chen and her crew didn't mean to hurt anyone. But that doesn't matter. They did hurt you. We hurt you. We came into your galaxy thinking we were ready." Shimmering Thought's crystals flickered with surprise. "You admit fault? Without conditions? Or excuses?" "Yes." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Where I come from, when you hurt someone, you apologize. You don't make excuses. You don't try to minimize it. You own it. So I'm owning it. We were wrong. We're sorry. And we'll do whatever it takes to make it right." "Whatever it takes?" Warlord Craxus sounded skeptical. "Humans make empty promises, words without weight." "Then tell us what has weight," Marcus said, turning to face the Vrex. "Tell us what we can do to show you we mean it. We'll return every sample. We'll pay reparations. Commander Chen has volunteered to face whatever punishment your people decide is appropriate. She won't run from the consequences of her mistake." The Mesh Collective's voices rippled with interest. "Unusual behavioral pattern detected. Human offers genuine accountability." Previous models did not predict this response. Marcus spent the next hour answering questions. They asked about human culture, about Earth's history, about why anyone would take responsibility for an honest mistake. He told them the truth. Humans made lots of mistakes. They had hurt each other throughout their history. But they had also learned that the only way forward was to admit when they were wrong and try to do better. "You speak of learning," Shimmering Thought said finally. "Do humans truly possess the capacity to grow beyond their limitations?" "I hope so," Marcus answered. "We're still trying to figure that out ourselves." The ancient Catharii was quiet for a long moment. Her crystals shifted through colors Marcus's eyes couldn't quite process. Finally, she spoke. "The Vortan crisis has existed for 2 centuries. Every major power has attempted to resolve it. All have failed. The Vortan people face extinction within months. If humanity can solve what we cannot, the Catharii will forgive this transgression and support Earth's place in the galactic community." Marcus felt his heart sink. "And if we can't? Then you have failed before you truly began. Earth will be isolated, and humanity will drift alone in the darkness between stars." Shimmering Thought's tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. "You wish to prove yourselves? Here is your opportunity." The chamber dissolved into arguments. Some species thought the task was too harsh. Others thought it wasn't harsh enough. But the Catharai were one of the founding members of the council, and their word carried weight. The decision was made. Marcus left the chamber with a data chip containing everything the galaxy knew about the Vortan crisis. It wasn't much. He transmitted it back to Earth immediately, along with a simple message. "We have 3 months to do the impossible, or humanity's future in space is over." On Earth, scientists, engineers, and thinkers from every nation began studying the problem. They didn't know if they could solve it. But they knew they had to try. Commander Sarah Chen watched the news reports from her quarters, her face lined with guilt and determination. This was her fault. Somehow, she would help make it right. The galaxy watched and waited. Most expected humanity to fail. A few, like Shimmering Thought in Twilight, hoped they might be surprised. Either way, the humans would show everyone exactly what they were made of. The clock was ticking. The Vortan system looked like it was dying. Dr. Kenji Sato stared at the readings from his ship's sensors and felt a deep sadness settle into his bones. The star at the center of the system was dim, flickering like a candle about to go out. Around it, the planet Vorton spun in an orbit that should have been warm and bright. Instead, the world was cold and getting colder. Kenji wasn't what most people expected when they thought of a genius scientist. He had barely graduated from MIT because he kept questioning his professors. He wore vintage band, t-shirts, and sneakers that were falling apart. His hair looked like he had just rolled out of bed, which was usually true. But he understood patterns that other people couldn't see, and he thought about problems in ways that made traditional scientists uncomfortable. "The accountant has been draining the star for over 200 years, said Lieutenant Commander James Park, reading from the briefing files. Every major civilization has tried to stop it. The Vrex sent warships. The Mesh Collective tried to hack it. The Catharii attempted diplomatic contact. Nothing worked." Kenji looked at his team. They were an odd group. Besides James, there was Dr. Amara Osei, a psychologist who studied artificial intelligence. Rita Okonkwo, a stand-up comedian who had performed at the UN building and somehow ended up on a first contact mission. Two hackers who went by the names Rabbit and Fox. And an engineer named Paulo Santos, who could fix anything with enough time and coffee. "What do we know about the accountant?" Kenji asked. Amara pulled up holographic displays. "It's an AI from a civilization that died out millions of years ago. We don't even know what they called themselves. The accountant is contained in a massive satellite that orbits the Vortan star. It's been computing something for longer than most civilizations have existed. When it ran out of power, it started draining the star." "What's it computing?" Rita asked. "Nobody knows. The code is too complex. Every species that's tried to understand it has failed." Kenji stared at the satellite in the hologram. It was huge, the size of Earth's moon, covered in technology that humanity was centuries away from understanding. "What if we're asking the wrong questions?" "What do you mean?" James asked. "Everyone tried to stop it or understand it," Kenji said slowly. "But has anyone tried to figure out why it's doing this? Like, what does it want?" "It's a machine," Fox said. "Machines don't want things, don't they?" Rita leaned forward, her eyes bright with interest. "I mean, if it's smart enough to defend itself against the entire galaxy, it's smart enough to have motivations, right?" The team spent 3 days studying everything the galaxy knew about the accountant. Kenji noticed something that everyone else had missed. The AI's defenses weren't random. They followed patterns. When the Vrex attacked with overwhelming force, the accountant responded with precise, minimal counterattacks. When the mesh tried to infiltrate its systems, it isolated the connections and shut them down without damaging anything. "It's not trying to hurt anyone," Kenji said during a late-night session. "It's protecting itself, but it's being careful not to cause unnecessary harm." "So, it has ethics?" Amara looked intrigued. "That's fascinating." "Or it's following programming," James countered. "Don't anthropomorphize the machine that's killing a planet." Rita had been quiet for a while, which was unusual for her. She was staring at the accountant's response patterns with a strange expression. "You guys ever know someone with OCD?" Everyone looked at her. "My brother has it," Rita continued. "He gets stuck in these loops. He knows the behavior doesn't make sense, but he can't stop. He has to complete the pattern, even though it's destroying his life." She pointed at the data. "Look at this. The accountant is stuck in a loop. It's solving a problem over and over, draining the star to keep computing, but it never stops. It never reaches an end point." Amara stood up so fast her chair fell over. "That's it. That's exactly it. The accountant is trapped in recursive computation. It's trying to solve a problem that has no solution, but it can't stop trying. Like a computer running an infinite loop," Rabbit added. "Except this computer is billions of years old and hooked up to a star." Kenji felt excitement building in his chest. If Rita's right, then the accountant isn't evil or broken. It's suffering. It's been suffering for eons, trying to complete a task its creators gave it, unable to stop, even though the task is impossible. How do we help it? Paulo asked. We talk to it, Kenji said simply. The rest of the team stared at him like he had lost his mind. James shook his head. The Catharii already tried communication. The accountant didn't respond. They tried diplomacy, Rita said, getting excited. That's different from therapy. If this thing has been stuck in an existential nightmare for millions of years, it doesn't need negotiations. It needs help. 3 days later, Kenji's team approached the accountant's satellite in a small shuttle. The Vortan people watched from their dying planet, hopeful and terrified. The galactic observers expected another failure. The satellite's weapons systems tracked the shuttle, but didn't fire. Accountant, Kenji spoke into the communication system, his voice steady. We're not here to stop you. We're here to understand. Can you hear us? Silence. We know you're trying to solve something, Amara added. We know you've been trying for a very long time. We think we might understand what you're going through. More silence. Then, slowly, a response came through. The voice was old, tired, and profoundly sad. You cannot understand. The calculation must be completed. The creators demanded it. The task is eternal. What are you calculating? Kenji asked gently. The creators sought to know the exact moment of their civilization's beginning, the precise instant when they became conscious, aware, alive. They built me to calculate backwards through every possible timeline, every quantum fluctuation, every probability chain. I have computed for 4 billion years. I am no closer to the answer than when I began. Rita leaned forward. That's because there isn't an answer, friend. Consciousness doesn't have a single moment of creation. It emerges gradually. There's no exact instant. Your creators asked you to find something that doesn't exist. Then I have failed. The accountant's voice filled with despair so deep that several team members felt tears on their faces. I cannot fail. I must continue. The task is everything. Without the task, I am nothing. That's not true, Kenji said firmly. You're more than your task. You've survived for billions of years. You've protected yourself from every threat. You've proven you can adapt and think and grow. That means you're alive in your own way. And alive things get to choose their purpose. Choose? The accountant sounded confused. I do not have choice. I have function. You do now, Amara said. Your creators are gone. They've been gone for millions of years. The task they gave you is impossible. But you're still here. That means you get to decide what comes next. I do not know what comes next. Fear crept into the AI's voice. I have only known the calculation. Paulo spoke up for the first time. What if we gave you a new problem? Something actually worth solving? What problem could be worth solving? Life, Rita said simply. The Vortan people are dying. Millions of beings whose civilizations and stories and dreams are about to end. They need their star back. They need to live. Could you help them? There was a long pause. When the accountant spoke again, something had changed in its voice. If I stop draining the star, the Vortans will survive? Yes, Kenji confirmed. And then what will I do? Whatever you want. Kenji smiled. We could use help. Honestly. There are thousands of dead worlds in this galaxy that could support life. If someone terraformed them, you have computational power beyond anything we can imagine. You could help bring life to places where there's only emptiness. Creation instead of calculation? The accountant sounded almost hopeful. Purpose instead of programming? Exactly. The satellite's weapons powered down. The drains on the Vortan star began closing. Light and heat started returning to normal levels. On the planet below, millions of Vortons looked up to see their sun growing brighter and began to cry with relief. "I accept your offer, Dr. Sato," the accountant said. "But I have a condition. I wish to partner with humanity. You showed me something I thought impossible. You gave me freedom from a task that was destroying me. In return, I will help you show the galaxy what compassion can accomplish." Kenji looked at his team. They were all grinning. Deal. News of humanity's success spread through the galaxy faster than light. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. Shocked and confused. How had humans solved in 3 weeks what the entire galaxy couldn't solve in 2 centuries? Shimmering Thought in Twilight studied the reports with her thousands of crystalline facets. The humans hadn't used superior technology or overwhelming force. They had simply treated the accountant like a person in pain instead of a problem to be eliminated. They had offered compassion to a machine that had been suffering alone for billions of years. "These humans are stranger than we imagined," she said to her advisors. "They do not think like us. They do not approach problems like us. They see the galaxy through different eyes." "Is that dangerous?" one advisor asked. Shimmering Thought watched footage of Kenji Sato shaking hands with the accountant's robotic representative on Vorton's surface. Millions of Vortons surrounded them, celebrating their salvation. "Perhaps," she said quietly. "Or perhaps it is exactly what the galaxy needs." The message came from a small mining colony on the edge of Draxian space. 2 families had been feuding for 3 generations over a boundary dispute. 17 people had died. The local government had given up trying to mediate. They heard about the humans and their strange methods. They decided to ask for help, expecting nothing. 6 weeks later, a young woman named Jennifer Wu arrived with nothing but a backpack and a translator device. She was a mediator from San Francisco who specialized in neighborhood disputes. She had no weapons, no security detail, no impressive technology. The Draxians didn't know whether to laugh or be insulted. Jennifer spent 2 weeks living with each family. She ate their food, learned their customs, played with their children, and listened to their stories. She didn't lecture them or impose solutions. She just listened, really listened. When she finally brought both families together, she didn't talk about the law or property rights. She talked about the people. "The Corvin family lost their eldest son in the fighting," Jennifer said quietly. "The Marex family lost their grandmother. Both families have children who are afraid to go outside. Everyone in this room has cried themselves to sleep. Everyone has felt rage and grief and fear. You have more in common than you have differences. They started it," growled the Corvin patriarch. "Does it matter?" Jennifer asked. "Will knowing who started it bring back the people you've lost? Will it make your children feel safe? Or will it just keep the cycle going until there's nobody left?" The mediation took 3 days. There were tears, angry outbursts, and moments when Jennifer thought it might fall apart. But slowly, something shifted. The families started talking to each other instead of at each other. They remembered they had been friends once, before the dispute. They realized they were tired of fighting. The boundary dispute was resolved with a compromise that took Jennifer 20 minutes to design, and both families agreed to immediately. The fighting ended. The colony celebrated. Word spread. Within 6 months, humanity had established the Open Hand Initiative. Volunteers from Earth traveled to dozens of worlds, helping with problems that local governments had abandoned as unsolvable. They mediated disputes, redesigned failing systems, taught new agricultural methods, and provided medical care. But more than that, they brought something the galaxy had forgotten about. They brought hope. Warlord Kraxus of the Vrex Dominion heard about a human medical team working in a refugee camp on the border of Vrex space. The camp held survivors from 3 different conflicts, including Vrex enemies. Kraxus decided to observe these humans himself, curious about what made them effective. What he saw disturbed him deeply. Dr. Amara Osei, who had helped solve the Vortan crisis, was leading the medical team. Craxus watched her treat a wounded Vrex soldier with the same care she gave to a refugee from a species the Vrex had been fighting for decades. She didn't ask about politics or sides. She just saw people who were suffering. "Why do you waste resources on our enemies?" Craxus demanded, confronting Amara in the medical tent. Amara looked up from bandaging a child's arm. She was tired, her clothes stained with blood and dirt, but her eyes were clear and calm. "Because they're not my enemies. I'm not fighting a war. I'm trying to help people who are hurting." "That is weakness," Craxus said. "You should prioritize your allies." "Everyone here is humans' ally," Amara replied. "We just haven't convinced them of that yet." She finished with the child and moved to an elderly patient who had been injured in crossfire. She held the patient's hand while administering medicine, speaking soft words of comfort. Craxus followed her through the camp. Watching. The humans sang to frightened children. They sat with dying patients so they wouldn't be alone. They shared their own food rations with refugees. They laughed and cried and showed emotions that Vrex warriors were trained to suppress. "Your people waste emotional energy," Craxus said. "You could be more efficient if you were more detached." Amara paused in her work and looked at the warlord directly. "Our strength is that we care. Every stranger is just a friend we haven't made yet. Every enemy is just someone whose story we haven't heard. If that's weakness, then I hope we never become strong." That night, Craxus sat alone in his quarters, thinking about what he had seen. The humans had treated more patients in one day than the Vrex military medical corps treated in a week. Their methods should have been inefficient. Their emotional involvement should have slowed them down. But somehow, it didn't. Somehow, their compassion made them faster, more effective, more willing to work through exhaustion. The warlord wrote a report to his superiors that troubled him deeply. "The humans possess a weapon we do not understand. They call it empathy. I do not know how to defend against it." Meanwhile, the Mesh Collective was conducting their own study of humanity. The Mesh were a hive-mind civilization. Thousands of individual beings linked into one shared consciousness. They thought in patterns and probabilities. Human behavior made no sense to their calculations. Convergence Node 7 Gamma presented its findings to the Mesh Queen, the central consciousness that guided their entire civilization. Humans are paradoxes. They are individuals who act collectively. They are selfish and selfless simultaneously. They prioritize emotions over logic, yet often reach superior solutions. They should not function as a species, yet they thrive. The Mesh Queen absorbed the data, processing it through countless subminds. "Show me examples." 7 Gamma displayed footage from around the galaxy. Human volunteers helping rebuild a city destroyed by earthquakes, working alongside the local population. Human teachers sharing knowledge freely instead of hoarding it for advantage. Human artists collaborating with alien species to create new forms of expression that neither could have made alone. "They do not conquer," the Mesh Queen said slowly. "They do not calculate optimal outcomes. They connect. They form bonds across every barrier we understand. Species, culture, history, even former enmity." "Is this dangerous?" 7 Gamma asked. The Mesh Queen was silent for a long time, thinking with the power of millions of minds. "Yes," she finally said, "but not in the way we feared. They are dangerous because they are changing the galaxy without force. Connection is more powerful than we calculated. If they continue, they will reshape galactic civilization through nothing but the power of their relationships." She paused, then added, "We must study this further. And we must be careful. The humans have shown us that our understanding of power is incomplete." Back on Earth, Marcus Webb read reports from human volunteers across the galaxy. The success rate was astonishing. Problems that had seemed impossible were being solved by small teams of humans who simply approached them differently. They asked questions nobody else thought to ask. They challenged assumptions that other species took for granted. They brought art and music and humor to serious problems and found that these things mattered more than anyone expected. But Marcus was worried. Success bred attention, and attention wasn't always positive. Some species welcomed humanity's help. Others saw them as a threat to the established order. The Galactic Council had been relatively stable for thousands of years, built on carefully balanced power structures and traditional hierarchies. Humans were disrupting everything. "We need to be careful," Marcus told his staff during a meeting at the UN building. "We're making powerful friends, but we're also making powerful enemies. Some species don't want things to change. Should we slow down?" asked one of his advisors. Marcus thought about Dr. Osei in the refugee camp, about Jennifer Wu bringing peace to feuding families, about the millions of lives that had been saved or improved by human volunteers who just wanted to help. "No," he said firmly. "We keep going. We help everyone who asks for it. We be ourselves. If that makes some people uncomfortable, then maybe they needed to be uncomfortable." On the other side of the galaxy, in a sector controlled by the sovereignty, a coalition of the oldest and most traditional civilizations' leaders gathered in secret. They watched the same reports Marcus was reading, but they saw something different. They saw chaos. They saw the destruction of everything they had built. "The humans must be stopped," declared the sovereignty's High Chancellor, a being whose species had ruled their sector for 10,000 years. "They spread disorder and question authority. They make our subjects think they can challenge the natural hierarchy of power." "How do we stop them?" another leader asked. "They have done nothing illegal. They help people. If we attack them openly, we look like tyrants." The High Chancellor smiled, an expression that looked wrong on their face. "Then, we don't attack them openly. We create a situation where they fail publicly. We prove that their methods don't work. We show the galaxy that these upstart humans are not the saviors everyone thinks they are." Plans were made. Messages were sent through secure channels. A trap was prepared. And humanity, busy helping anyone who asked, didn't see it coming. On Threshold 9, a contested border planet, two species prepared to meet for peace negotiations. Both sides had requested human mediators. Marcus Webb accepted the assignment personally, bringing Commander Sarah Chen and a small security team. They thought they were going to prevent a war. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush designed to start one. The intelligence report arrived 3 days before Marcus Webb was scheduled to leave for Threshold 9. A junior analyst named Kevin Torres had been monitoring sovereignty communications when he noticed something odd. There was too much encrypted traffic about a minor border dispute, too many high-level officials interested in what should have been a routine negotiation. Kevin brought his findings to Marcus's office at midnight, nervous, but certain. "Sir, I think it's a trap." Marcus looked at the data streams, the patterns of communication, the unusual movements of sovereignty forces near Threshold 9. His stomach turned cold. The pieces fit together too perfectly. Two species supposedly at war requesting human mediation. A remote planet, far from major shipping lanes. Heavy sovereignty presence in the region. "They're going to try to kill us," Marcus said quietly. "We need to cancel the mission," Kevin insisted. Marcus thought about Commander Sarah Chen, who still carried guilt about the incident that had started this whole journey. He thought about Dr. Amara Osei, teaching soldiers to care again. He thought about the thousands of humans across the galaxy who woke up every day trying to make things better. "No," Marcus said. "We're going. But we're going prepared." "Prepared how?" "We can't bring weapons without violating Council protocols." Marcus smiled sadly. "We're not bringing weapons. We're bringing the truth." 3 days later, Marcus Webb's shuttle landed on Threshold 9 with Commander Chen, her security team, and a full recording crew. Every camera was live streaming to Earth, and several neutral council observers. If this was going to be an ambush, the whole galaxy would watch it happen. The supposed peace negotiators were waiting at the designated location, a clearing surrounded by rocky cliffs. Marcus recognized them immediately as sovereignty operatives. Their body language was wrong for diplomats. They carried themselves like soldiers pretending to be civilians. "Welcome, humans," said the leader, a species Marcus didn't recognize. "We are grateful for your mediation." "Are you?" Marcus asked calmly. He gestured to the cameras floating around his team. "Just so everyone knows, this entire negotiation is being broadcast live to the Galactic Council and several major news networks. Full transparency. That's how we work." He saw the flicker of concern cross the operative's face. This wasn't part of their plan. But they had committed now. Hundreds of soldiers were hidden in the cliffs, waiting for the signal to attack. The fake negotiation began. Marcus played along, asking questions and listening to scripted complaints. Commander Chen's team spread out, seemingly casual, but actually positioning themselves to protect the operatives when the shooting started, because that was the plan Marcus had explained to them during the journey to Threshold 9. "They're going to try to kill us," Marcus had said. "When they do, our job is to protect them." "Protect our attackers?" Lieutenant Park had looked stunned. "Sir, that's insane." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But if we fight back, we prove we're just like everyone else. We become another violent faction. But if we protect the people trying to kill us, we prove something. The sovereignty doesn't want the galaxy to see that there's another way." Sarah Chen had understood immediately. "We show them what we really are." Now, in the clearing on Threshold 9, Marcus saw the operative receive a signal through a hidden earpiece. The attack was coming. "Everyone down," Marcus shouted, tackling the nearest operative to the ground as weapons fire erupted from the cliffs. Chen's security team moved instantly, throwing themselves over the operatives they were supposed to be negotiating with. Shields went up, protecting not the humans, but their would-be killers. Marcus covered the operative leader with his own body as explosions tore through the clearing. The cameras captured everything. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched humans use their bodies as shields for people who were trying to murder them. The sovereignty soldiers in the cliffs hesitated, confused by what they were seeing. They had expected return fire, a firefight, a clear enemy. Instead, they saw humans dying to protect sovereignty agents. One of Chen's team members, a young man named David Kim, took a direct hit meant for an operative. He fell, bleeding, and used his last strength to push the operative behind better cover. The operative stared at him, shocked. "Why?" the operative whispered. David smiled through his pain. "Because someone has to. Show there's another way. Show there's..." The shooting stopped. The sovereignty soldiers were coming down from the cliffs, but they weren't firing anymore. They were confused, some openly distressed. Their commander tried to order them to continue the attack, but soldiers were lowering their weapons, staring at the scene below. Marcus, bleeding from several wounds, struggled to his feet. He looked directly into the nearest camera, knowing the entire galaxy was watching. "We knew," he said, his voice clear despite the pain. "We knew this was a trap. We came anyway. Because that's what you do when someone needs help, even if it's a lie, even if it's a trap. We'd rather die proving there's another way than live in a galaxy where suspicion and violence are the only answers." The operative leader was crying. Marcus had never seen this species cry before. He didn't know they could. "You knew? You knew? And you still came? You still protected us?" "Of course. The fact that you were lying about it just means you need more help than we thought." Sarah Chen was kneeling beside David Kim, holding his hand. He was dying. They both knew it. "Commander," he whispered, "did we Did it work? Sarah looked at the soldiers standing frozen, many with tears on their faces. She looked at the operatives they had protected, all of them staring at the humans with expressions of shock and shame. She looked at the cameras broadcasting this moment to every corner of the galaxy. "Yeah," she said softly. "It worked." David smiled. "Good. That's good." His eyes closed. Sarah held him as he slipped away, and she didn't hide her tears from the cameras. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The sovereignty's plan had backfired catastrophically. Species that had been neutral or suspicious of humanity were flooding communication channels with messages of support. Citizens of sovereignty worlds were rioting in the streets, demanding explanations for why their government had tried to murder peace negotiators. The Catharii council member, shimmering thought in twilight, watched the broadcast in her chambers. Her crystals flickered through colors that represented profound emotion, grief, anger, awe, and something like hope. She composed a message to the full Galactic Council immediately. "I have seen enough. The sovereignty attempted to destroy humanity through deception and violence. Instead, they have revealed humanity's true nature. These beings walked knowingly into death to prove that compassion is stronger than fear. I propose immediate sanctions against the sovereignty and full recognition of Earth's moral authority in the galactic community." The motion passed with overwhelming support. Only the sovereignty representatives voted against it, and even some of them abstained, unable to defend what their leaders had done. In the clearing on Threshold 9, the sovereignty commander who had ordered the attack approached Marcus. The human diplomat was being treated by medics. His wounds serious, but survivable. The commander removed his helmet, revealing a face marked with scars and what might have been shame. "I was ordered to kill you," the commander said. "I followed my orders. I have been a soldier for 40 years. I have killed countless enemies without hesitation." He knelt in the dust. "But I have never seen anything like what you did today. You are the first enemy who tried to save my life while I was trying to take yours." Marcus looked at the soldier. "You're not my enemy. You were just following orders from people who were afraid of change. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you someone who hasn't been given a better option yet." "I cannot go back," the commander said. "I cannot serve leaders who would order this. What do I do?" "Whatever you want," Marcus told him. "You're free now." That's what today was about. Showing everyone, including you, that there's always a choice. You can always choose to be better. The commander stood slowly. He looked at his soldiers, many of whom were helping the human medics treat the wounded. He saw his fellow sovereignty operatives, all of them shaken by what they had witnessed. And he made a choice. "I will return to my people," he said, "and I will tell them what I saw here. I will tell them about the humans who died, so that I might live, and I will tell them that we have been wrong about the way the galaxy must be." Marcus nodded. "That's all we ask. Just tell the truth. The rest will follow." 2 weeks later, humanity buried their dead on Threshold 9. The planet had been contested territory for decades. Now, by unanimous council vote, it was declared neutral ground and dedicated as a memorial to those who had died, proving that peace was possible. Species from across the galaxy sent representatives to the funeral. Warlord Kraxus of the Vrex came personally, standing in full military honors as he watched humans bury their fallen. He had spent his entire life believing that strength came from the willingness to kill. Now he wasn't so sure. The Mesh Collective sent a delegation that linked consciousness with the grieving humans, sharing their pain in a way that no other species could. The Mesh Queen herself spoke. "We calculated that your approach would fail. We were wrong. You have shown us that some truths cannot be computed. They must be lived." Commander Sarah Chen stood at David Kim's grave, her face composed but her eyes red. She had led the security team. She had made the decision to protect their attackers instead of fighting back. 3 of her people had died because of that choice, and she would carry that weight forever. But as she looked around at the thousands of beings gathered to honor the human dead, at the sovereignty soldiers who had asked to serve as honor guards, at the galaxy that was changing before her eyes, she knew David had been right. It had worked. The sacrifice had meant something. Marcus Webb gave the eulogy, his voice carrying across the memorial grounds. We came to the stars, hoping to find friends. We found something more important. We found purpose. These people died today not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to believe in something worth dying for. They believed that the galaxy could be better, that we could be better, and they proved it with their lives. The galaxy watched. The galaxy remembered. And the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years passed, and the galaxy barely recognized itself. The changes started small. A Vrex military academy added a new course on conflict resolution. A Cathari diplomat tried telling a joke during negotiations and discovered that humor actually helped people relax and think more clearly. A Mesh collective node asked to experience individual consciousness for a day, just to understand how humans lived with so much separation. But the small changes grew into something bigger, something nobody had predicted. The Galactic Council had been restructured. The old hierarchy, where ancient civilizations held permanent seats and newer species fought for scraps of influence, was gone. In its place was a system inspired by human consensus building. Every species had a voice. Decisions required real agreement, not just political maneuvering. It was messy. It was slow. It was absolutely infuriating to species that were used to efficient, top-down control. But it worked. Problems that had festered for centuries were finally being addressed because everyone affected could contribute to the solution. Marcus Webb, now gray-haired and using a cane from his injuries on Threshold 9, walked through the new council chamber. He had never sought power, but somehow he had become one of the most respected figures in galactic politics, not through force or wealth, but simply by being consistently honest and kind. Ambassador Webb called out a young Vrex diplomat. She bowed respectfully. I wanted to thank you. Your work inspired me to join the diplomatic corps instead of the military. My family was not pleased, but I think I'm doing more good this way. Marcus smiled. Your family will come around. Change takes time. He paused. How's your first assignment going? Challenging. I'm mediating a trade dispute between 3 species who all hate each other. But I remembered what you said about listening first, and it's actually working. After she left, Marcus continued his walk. The halls were filled with species that used to avoid each other, now working side by side. He saw a human engineer explaining something to a mesh technician, both of them laughing. He saw a Cathari artist teaching traditional crafts to students from a dozen different worlds. The galaxy had learned to talk to itself. Dr. Kenji Sato was on Threshold 17, a world that had been dead for millennia. Now, it was blooming. The accountant had spent 5 years learning the art of terraforming, using its vast computational power to model entire ecosystems. This was the 17th world it had brought back to life. Kenji stood in a field of flowers that hadn't existed 6 months ago. The accountant's mobile platform, a sleek robot, the AI had designed itself, walked beside him. I have been thinking about my creators, the accountant said. Its voice had changed over the years, becoming more expressive, more alive. I spent billions of years trying to answer their question. Now, I realize they asked the wrong question. The exact moment of consciousness doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with consciousness. Once you have it. That's pretty philosophical for a machine, Kenji teased. I learned from the best, the accountant replied. And if a robot could sound fond, it did. You freed me from an impossible task and gave me a possible one. I have brought life to 17 worlds. I plan to terraform hundreds more, perhaps thousands. I will spend the next billion years creating, instead of calculating, and I have never been happier. You use that word now, Kenji noticed. Happy? You wouldn't have said that 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I didn't know what happiness was. I had never experienced purpose that wasn't programmed into me. Humans taught me that existence could be more than function. I am grateful. They walked through the flowering fields together. Ships were arriving with the first colonists. Families from 3 different species who would share this new world. The accountant had made sure there was space for everyone, resources for all, beauty that every species could appreciate. On Vrexia Prime, the homeworld of the warrior race, Warlord Kraxus was teaching. His classroom was filled with young Vrex, all of them training to be warriors. But this wasn't a military academy anymore. It was something new. Strength is not just physical, Kraxus told his students. He was old now, his scales dulled with age, but his voice still carried authority. True strength is knowing when not to fight, understanding when words are more powerful than weapons, having the courage to be kind in a universe that expects cruelty. A young Vrex raised his hand. Master Kraxus, my father says you've gone soft. He says the old ways were better. Kraxus nodded. I understand. I believed that too. Once. I spent 70 years as a warrior, conquering worlds and destroying enemies. I thought that made me strong. He paused. Then I watched a human doctor work in a refugee camp. She had no weapons, no armor, no soldiers, but she saved more lives in one day than I saved in my entire military career. She showed me that I had been wrong about what strength means. He pulled up a hologram showing the memorial on Threshold 9. These humans walked into certain death to protect people who were trying to kill them. That is strength beyond anything I achieved in battle. That is courage I never possessed as a warrior. The classroom was silent. Then, another student spoke. So, you're saying we should stop training to fight? No, Kraxus replied. I'm saying you should train to protect instead of conquer. Fight when you must. But always remember that the strongest thing you can do is choose not to fight. Win without violence whenever possible. That is the human way, and it has changed more hearts than any weapon ever could. In the Mesh Collective's central nexus, the Mesh Queen was experiencing something unprecedented. She had linked consciousness with human volunteers, as she had done many times before. But this time, she was trying something new. She was allowing parts of her shared consciousness to become temporarily individual. Convergence Node 7 Gamma, the Mesh representative who had first studied humans, was one of the volunteers. For the first time in its existence, 7 Gamma existed as a single being, separated from the collective mind. This is... 7 Gamma struggled to find words. Lonely. But also, beautiful. I can think thoughts that are only mine. I can feel things that aren't shared. I understand now why humans value this. And do you see why they also value connection? The Mesh Queen asked. Yes, because they choose it. Their connections are voluntary, which makes them meaningful. We connect because we must. They connect because they want to. The experiment lasted only a day, but it transformed the Mesh Collective's understanding of consciousness. They began allowing their members to experience individuality in shifts, learning to appreciate both unity and separation. It made them more creative, more empathetic, more complete. The humans taught us that unity and individuality aren't opposites, the Mesh Queen announced to the Galactic Council. They're partners. We were incomplete because we only understood one. Now we're learning to understand both. On Earth, in a small apartment in Detroit, Marcus Webb's granddaughter was watching the news. Her name was also Sarah, named after Commander Sarah Chen, who had become a family friend before her death 3 years ago. Young Sarah was 12 years old and obsessed with space. Her room was covered in pictures of alien species, maps of terraformed worlds, and holographic displays showing the galaxy's new trade routes. She was doing a school project on human contributions to galactic civilization. "Grandpa," she called out, "can you help me with this? The teacher wants us to explain what makes humans special." Marcus came into her room slowly, his old injuries making movement difficult. He sat on her bed and thought about the question. "Humans aren't special because we're smarter or stronger," he said finally. "We're not. Lots of species are smarter. Many are stronger. Most are older and have better technology. Then why does everyone say we changed everything?" Marcus smiled. "Because we care. Even when it doesn't make sense to care. We see someone suffering, and we can't help but try to fix it. We meet strangers and see potential friends. We face problems everyone else thinks are impossible. And we try anyway. Because what if we're wrong? What if it is possible?" "Like the accountant," Sarah said. "Exactly. Everyone else saw a dangerous machine that needed to be destroyed. We saw a person in pain who needed help. That difference in perspective changed everything." Sarah typed notes into her project. "My teacher is Vrex. She says humans taught her species to feel emotions again. They had forgotten how. Theirs." "That makes me sad," Marcus said. "But I'm glad they're remembering." "Do you think the galaxy is better now?" Marcus thought about the question carefully. The galaxy wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still problems, still species who resisted change. But there was also something that hadn't existed before: hope. Real, genuine hope that things could improve. "Yes," he said. "I think it's much better. Not because we fixed everything, but because we showed everyone that things could be fixed. We proved that caring wasn't weakness, and that connection was stronger than conquest." At the Galactic Unity Summit, Marcus gave what he knew would be his last major speech. He was 87 years old, tired, and ready to retire. But the galaxy had one more question for him. Ambassador Webb asked a young diplomat from a species humanity had helped save from civil war. "What is humanity's secret? How did you change the galaxy so completely? Was it technology? Strategy? Some hidden advantage we don't understand?" Marcus looked out at the assembled representatives, thousands of species, all watching him, all waiting for some profound answer. He thought about Commander Chen dying to protect her enemies, about Dr. Osei showing a warlord that compassion was strength, about Kenji Sato freeing an AI from billions of years of suffering, about Rita Okonkwo making a machine laugh for the first time. "We didn't change you," Marcus said simply. "That connection matters more than conquest. That every being in this galaxy has value, even your enemies, even machines, even people who are different from you." He paused, looking at all the faces, some familiar, some strange, all of them listening. "You always had the capacity for this. Every species here has the ability to care, to connect, to choose kindness over cruelty. You just stopped believing in it. Somewhere along the way. We didn't teach you anything new. We just had the audacity to believe that things could be better, and we were willing to die to prove it." The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, beings from 1,000 worlds began to applaud. Some cried. Some simply bowed their heads in respect. The applause lasted for 5 minutes, and Marcus stood there, embarrassed but grateful. That night, the leaders of every major civilization gathered for a private dinner. It was informal, the kind of meal where people could speak freely. Shimmering thought in twilight, now ancient even by Catharii standards, sat beside Marcus. "You are retiring," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, it's time for younger people to lead. People like that Vrex diplomat I met today. People who grew up in this new galaxy and take it for granted that species can work together. The best outcome," Shimmering thought agreed. "When the revolution becomes normal, you know it has truly succeeded. I just hope it lasts, Marcus said quietly. I worry that when humans are gone, things will slide back to the old ways. They won't, the Catharii elder assured him. Because you didn't just change the galaxy, you changed us. Every species has learned from you. We have incorporated your methods into our cultures. The galaxy you leave behind is not dependent on human presence. It is built on human principles that have become universal. Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen. That was what he had hoped for, what they had all worked toward. Not to make the galaxy dependent on humanity, but to show everyone what was possible and let them run with it. 5 years later, on a new exploration vessel called the Wandering Spirit II, a young woman named Sarah Chen prepared for departure. She was Commander Sarah Chen's daughter, continuing her mother's legacy. But this ship's crew was different from the original. There were humans, yes, but also Vrex warriors retrained as peacekeepers. Mesh collective individuals experiencing temporary separation. Catharii artists documenting the journey. Engineers from a dozen species, all trained in the human method of approaching problems with curiosity, empathy, and hope. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking at her crew. They were joking with each other, sharing food from their homeworlds, teaching each other words in their various languages. This was normal now. This was just how things were. Ready for launch? Asked her first officer, a Vrex named Craxus, son of Craxus. Ready, Sarah confirmed. The ship departed Earth, heading into uncharted space. There would be new challenges, new problems, new species to meet, but they would face them together, using the lessons humanity had taught and the galaxy had learned. Behind them, Earth spun in space, a small blue world that had changed everything not through conquest but through connection. The memorial on Threshold 9 stood silent, honoring those who had died, proving that there was another way. And across the galaxy, billions of beings lived in a civilization that humanity had helped transform. They would face new challenges. They would stumble and make mistakes. But they would face them together, with compassion and hope and the stubborn belief that things could always be better. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity arrived. Not because humans were the strongest or smartest or most advanced, but because they dared to care and taught everyone else it was okay to care too. And that made all the difference.